Come on, guys. I'm Rick. Welcome to Your Seat at Table. We are looking at Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition's Epic Level Handbook. This came out roughly 2002. Uh, there are so much to be said about Epic Level that I got to be careful. I don't drag this thing into a 2-hour damn video because nobody wants to hear it. I have mixed opinions on Epic Level. Let's take a look at this stuff. So we look into our chapter, character skills and feats on beyond 20th level. Epic level prestige classes, epic leadership, epic skills, epic feats, character or chapter 2, epic spells, chapter 3, running an epic game, epic expectations. Right? That's the thing. When people hear epic, a lot of players either cringe and are not really interested in it, or a smaller number of players are very interested in it and then maybe have a misguided idea of what that might be. And then there are people like me who have very detailed ideas of what I think this crap should be, but rarely ever can get it across to anybody else. So, epic expectations. When characters reach the 21st level, they are ready for grandeur, larger challenges than they've ever faced before. The business of running guilds, provinces, or even nations may have come and gone already if your players find politically political machinations in governments and kingdoms to be exciting. They don't need to ever advance to epic levels. Player characters and non-player characters of all levels sit on the thrones of nations, the multiverse over. Right. Okay. Therein lies half of my complaint, half of my issue, and half of my appeal to it. So, Epic Level Handbook. What is an Epic Level character? Quit plainly, Epic character is one who's achieved 21st level of some form. Although the player's handbook describes character progression up to 20th level, legend and literature are replete with heroes and villains who have gone beyond normal limits. All right, so first off, one of the key things about Epic Level stuff, we stopped tracking advancements like we previously did. The endless millions of experience points at some point have to come to an end. It's just like certain stat modifiers. You cap out. There's only so many bonuses you can get for an attack, for example. If there's only so many sneak attacks you can get, so many repetitive attacks. The idea of having a 21st level fighter who can do 52 attacks in one round sounds awesome until you have to do all the damn dice rolls. When you start tossing all that dice around, it becomes a hell of a lot less awesome by the damn day. I'm just saying it from practical experience. Another problem I've run into from previous years, previous experience running extremely high level campaigns is that a lion's share of the mundane stuff is now well below the characters that need to worry or think about. They're not going to deal with the run of the mill goblins and ogres and things like this. They can take their thumb and finger and just flick a damn full grown ogre halfway across the continent. What kind of threat do they represent? Unless it's like a dumb luck shot kind of thing. They just remove so much of the material and options we have already from the table because we have progressed to the point where it's ludicrous to try to even use them as a kind of foe or any kind of stumbling block for our players. It becomes extremely more challenging. It's like prestige class. I mean, I've always been of the opinion if you're going to get up to the levels where you start talking prestige classes, then your level of internal play, your immersion should have increased. You should have a lot more going on at the table that does not involve outright combat. Which is, once again, a lot of players find that to be boring or not their gig. And then what do you do? So the same problem. We get into when earliest. I made a mistake when I first started dealing with planar travel and even the idea of epic level stuff way back in the day. Because as kids, we just took everything literally as a guide. It's what they told us to do, so that's what we did. So when we looked at things like a level progression beyond, X amount of levels, we just looked at the number, did a little math, and said, "This is what you need for the next. Want to be a level 29? This is what you need." And it was not the correct way of doing it, and we didn't understand that, but we still did it. We had a lot of fun doing it. So was it right or wrong? Yes, we did it wrong, but had fun doing it that way. So, you can make the best out of it you can. So what we run into is a lot of players start to, I don't know, their expectations change. In a lot of ways, we get into untried territory for a lot of people, including the game masters. And at that point, it's a challenge. It's in this case for epic level play, it's almost insinuated that your level characters have gotten so powerful and so capable that now they're going to go up against the literal gods themselves. And I've played campaigns in that scenario where that has actually happened, and you end up pulling the deity and demigod book out, and there's your stats for all these foes that now your PCs are trying to go after or successfully going after, which in and of itself can create a problem because unless you can keep the flow of the level and the intensity strong, these epic level campaigns tend to peter out. They tend to run their course fairly quickly because people get bored. And it's this min max experience to the extreme. It gets to be a problem after a while. So we talk about what I was just talking about on beyond 20th level, class and level bonuses. Right? And it talks about how you can keep advancing. That's the other thing. When we talk about how we get to epic level, well, you can have prestige classes. You can have multi-class characters that reach a point where they exceed 20 levels. Anytime you hit 21 levels in a combination thereof. So you have a jack of all trades that's got 3 different subclasses that they're operating, and all total it comes up to 21. Now they're considered epic level. Even though technically with that wider range of options, they're actually weaker than what they would be if somebody was purely focused on it being a 21st level, whatever, in my experience. So we get into things like the epic barbarian, the epic fighter, the epic druid. So just much more of the same with a bit more punch and a bit more, nothing fancy, nothing spectacular, so on and so forth. Characters, spells, and feats. That's another thing about spells. At no point does spells increase beyond 9th level. So there are no 10th level spells because the idea was, my understanding is, if you look at the spell progression from first level or from cantrips to 9th level, so technically you have 10 levels of spells if you count cantrips as a 0 level, right? So you have this limited spell capability. At this point, beyond the 9th level, you now get customized stuff. So your player who wants to be the wizard has to be able to custom make his stuff, and you're going to have to work with him. So you're going to have to come up with some special magic that they created. The Bigsby got to be epic level when he started leaving behind this kind of stuff. That's kind of where I'm going with that. There's some challenges of that. You have to creating magic from scratch is extremely balanced necessary. And while there are rule sets to help you do that, you better be invested in them. Once again, so this comes back to another problem being an epic level. Epic level involves a lot more research and study, and mechanically speaking, off table than a lot of players are willing to do. And you as the GM, you simply can't do all this stuff. It's in part because, and I believe this, that when we started seeing prestige levels and then later epic level play come out, that a lot of GMs started to realize we can't do it all. There's just simply too much here. So we started cultivating this idea: the more that the player does, the more invested they are. And it grew from there. But, what do I know? What do I know? Divine Embassy, Epic Infiltrator, I don't know, the epic skills, characters, and feats. Yeah, just more of the same, more of the advanced same. We give you some examples. Here's, right. Maybe it says a 10th level, but the 10th level is a custom-made thing. It's not something you can go and pull out of a damn manual somewhere, unless you got a genre manual that comes from a different franchise. Which, hey, if it works, knock yourself out, right? So the feats and stuff, blah, blah. Epic level spells. Epic level spells are challenges unto themselves, and some of the challenge for epic level is the not so much the creation, but the presentation and the delivery. So, like here, it's like beyond ninth level spells. Big spellcasters begin to understand how magic really works. Through rough application of formidable intelligence, vast wisdom, and sheer force of personality, a spellcaster can manipulate cosmic and personal energy directly. Such a spellcaster is released from the shackles imposed by level-depending spellcasting. The classifications of player by level loses all meaning to the caster of epic level spells. The trade-off for such transcendent power is time and resources. Developing and casting epic spells is a time-consuming and costly thing. So, what are epic spells? Epic spells are spells developed from the ground up using a list of magical ingredients called seeds. Despite their power, epic spells still follow the basic rules for casting spells, and except as specifically noted otherwise in this chapter. So, you're going to once again customize your spells. Now, I had a couple players over the decades that were really good at this. Most were not. The one fellow that I'm thinking of, he was quite creative and quite adept. And what he mostly did at prestige and epic levels was he utilized the existing repertoire of spell boosters and advancers. So he could sit there and use some low level spells in some extremely creative ways and then create them he created the means to have 2 or 3 different types of spell triggered at the same time to give multiple effects in a certain environment or a certain scenario with perhaps delayed firing or enhanced firing or you see what I'm getting at. He got very creative using the fact is high level led him to really ramp up stuff or to do multiple contingencies and be prepared for it. And he got to be very good at it. One of those things was defensive abilities. He learned that he could cast defensive spells of certain types and natures that remained dormant unless triggered, either triggered by him in a moment of need or triggered as an effect when something else affects him. So somebody fires off a certain type of weapon or spell, and it would trigger these contingencies that would do multiple things. So in some cases, they would fire off a return offensive spell or defensive spell to counter the spell that was fired or to affect the person who did it and teleport him away or dimension door him slightly to the left or blink or, he got to be very creative with it. And I had to be very careful to read all of his notes when it came to these things because otherwise he could pull some rabbits that threw me off in the wrong time. It's a matter of choice and stuff. So it's one of the reasons I highly, highly believe that most players are not epic level players, and most players are going to get bored with epic level play quickly. This is from experience. This is why I'm confident that the best, most remembered campaigning or gaming at a Dungeons and Dragons table specifically occurs between the third and seventh level. Some of the best stuff occurs by most people's opinions. Once you start getting above 10th level, things start getting to become, paper heavy, and you start to have to be creative. And a lot of players don't want to be bothered with that. They really want to accept what's available, but they really don't want to get expansions behind it. That's the downsides for some of these rules because while they can give you mechanics on how to do certain things beyond a certain level, somehow to enhance things, at the end of the day, you're adding on another layer of flavor and concept to your existing campaign. And if your players aren't 100% on board with it, it's going to sink it. That's just the facts. You don't have to like it. I don't have to like it the way it is. So we get into chapter 3, running an epic game. You'll find that running an epic D&D game requires more preparation than other lower level game. However, you'll also discover that the rewards are worth it. So, as I've been saying repeatedly, epic level play is not for everybody, although a lot of everybody will want to try it. It's a trial and error thing. One of the things that they find that the amount of legwork, paperwork, the amount of details you need to keep and manage to get a successful level play at that scale can be daunting for some. Otherwise, you have this we have as a game master, there's this dangerous slope or this risk that we can run campaigns at the epic level and do it frivolously and thoughtlessly with little consideration to why people are epic level in the first place. How come they reached that level of achievement and what was their goals and so on and so forth. We tend to mitigate or minimize the impact of what epic level is supposed to be. So when I mention repeatedly in other videos, is this the sort of thing the Kinneys of the world can do? Can the Kinneys of the world, can the people who have are not that adept at deeply cerebral anything, be truly a good epic level campaigner? The answer generally is no. I don't want to say outright no because there's always exceptions to the rule. There are also people that can be very, I don't know, bored or naive or not engaged at the lower levels that suddenly become far more engaged at the higher levels because we're adding many layers of things going on here that appeal to them and other than what the traditional hack and slash and search and find that most of your low level stuff does. You just have to look at it from that perspective. The expectations are going to vary from table to table and group from group, right? So advancing to the 21st level and beyond, leave the old world behind. First epic level. Okay, so let's talk about that. Leaving the old world behind. One of the first problems you start to run into, both as a player, an epic level player, and an epic level dungeon master, game master, is that the players can basically murderize anything, majority, 80-90% of the stuff that was considered a threat in the monster manuals. Your players can easily handle them. One way or another, they can either step away from them, ignore them, or outright obliterate them. This is a problem. Because, like I said, you've mitigated a whole lot of your things. This means your traditional adventuring and campaigning that goes on in the quote prime material plane or the traditional gaming sandbox is boring. It's grossly underserving the epic levels of characters' abilities. So you have to expand beyond that. And I've played at tables and I've ran tables where the players just saw this as a bigger version of arena combat. So ever bigger foes for them to face off against and defeat. That was the whole underlining goal. It was just to defeat the thing, get more powerful and more rich so we can defeat the next big thing. And that's great for a while, but you get bored with it, especially when you got all the possible options available to you for epic level play. So when you start putting things in like skullduggery and scheming and cahooting and the list just goes on. Well, we're talking things that go beyond the basic idea of hack and slash and how deadly your character is. That's why I go back when I said in previous videos, this is why there's a whole lot of spells and a whole lot of feats that are not martial. And people are staggered. They often ignore them. They don't see the value of them until you're in a specific settings, or you need them as you're going to hire somebody else with that spell ability because you don't want to be bothered with it. That kind of stuff. So there's that to keep in mind. You also tend to progress. That's why I said, in my mind, epic level goes hand in hand with planes, and extra dimensional travel. In that, in the planes, you now have access to literally to the domains of the gods. You can travel to the domain of the god and screw with people there and screw with the god. And at that point, you are no longer part of your mundane world. You've gone beyond. That's why so many, they say, well, how come the world of Faerun isn't just stick with epic level people or because everybody blah, and that's a good argument. Why aren't they? Well, for part, because a lot of those people, when they hit that massive level, people leave the real world behind. They go off into the cosmos to pursue higher agendas. This is why a lot of the things you encounter, the beasts and creatures and stuff you encounter on the plains, are so bloody dangerous and so bloody damaging. You literally can travel to the nine hells and take on frickin' the demons and devils that live there and fight them. I'm just saying, and have a good chance of surviving it, including the extremely exotic and hostile environments that many of these planar locations include. So for epic levels, you kind of leave the real world behind. So we're talking, leave the old world behind. It's just like a lot of your abilities. So you reach this ability. If I look at Forgotten Realms as an example, so we look at epic level characters in Forgotten Realms. Elminster comes right off the bat. So does the Blackstaff. Well, these two people did what? Well, Elminster's basically been a more of a he's a wizard, but he's also a cleric of sorts, because he was very intimate, literally intimately connected to Mystra at the time, the magic, the goddess of magic, and so he was one of her servants, and one of her, anointed with the secret fire types, and this put him in a completely different realm of capabilities. The average mundane problems of the Forgotten Realms were beneath him. He spent when he did stuff, it was mostly running around fixing the problems that other high level spellcasters accidentally or intentionally, let loose on the world. That meant he did a lot of, and I've got several novels on it, where he goes to hell. He does a bunch of planar travel. He's really outside the league of the average citizen of the Forgotten Realms. Well, the Blackstaff, similar situation. So what does he do? And he's actually a living entity, not in a semi quasi immortal like Elminster. He's an actual human being that has a lifespan, and he's not planning on being he doesn't plan on being a lich. So he's got a limited number of time to him, and yet he becomes extremely powerful, very important in Waterdeep, very important in the Harper's organization, very important in a number of ways, and mostly because you don't see him doing mid-range spellcastings to keep his power paid for. I'm just pointing out to you, there's distinct reasons why these are high level characters that Renaissance throughout the Forgotten Realms settings, and you find any of your favorite sandboxes, and you'll find similar stuff. So in some aspects, your players are now moved into that realm, so they should have a little bit more, what do you say, a little more horse in the game kind of thing in my mind. It can be a real challenge to find a good balance. That's why I said most epic level campaigns, they don't last. They tend to peter out. People get bored with it, or they become like I said, a lot of players just aren't mentally geared to play at the level that a good epic campaign really needs to be. If you're just looking for an epic level hack and slash, knock yourself out. But you're failing to understand my view of the nuances involved here. So when I talk about players, going on about when some people talk about 4 dimensions of play and the theater of the mind, some of the richest theater of the mind comes out of epic level play, because it has to. You have to be at that level of engagement with your table, and otherwise the logistics alone will bog it down to the point where it's not fun. A lot of players just become bored with having to have entire notebooks devoted to just trying to keep track of what they're doing, because their character has so much potential offensive whatever. Like I said, you want to be an epic level spellcaster, crafting your own spells. That means literally having your own spell book to keep track of all that stuff, including the what, whys, and wherefores, and hows of what it was that allows you to do that high level, thing you've concocted. And for some players, that is a big draw, but for a lot of players, it isn't. I mean, if you're going to be the epic level fighter, well, you've perfected your fighting skills to the point of being, on a godlike level. What more is there? What works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. So we got variant rules, open-ended rolls, death for massive damage, extend death's door, spell resistance for the time stop, NPC challenging ratings, epic luck, 3 deaths and you're out variant, We got the Epic Campaign, designing site-based adventures, character motivations, divine tasks, the Epic Quest. All right, that's the other thing with epic level stuff. Generally speaking, the lower levels concept, everything is, well, we're going out to, we're going to go out and clear out the caverns of all the orcs and stuff to make the citizens of the little village, safer. So, B2, for example, keep on the hill. Let's do all this stuff. Well, that has motivations and reasons, and you don't have to think too hard as to why. But when you get to the 25th level and none of that is, what, we're going to clean out the caverns. Why bother? You can just collapse the cavern. Your magic gives your buddy here can probably collapse the caverns all together, bear everything down there. Or your warrior, your fighter can just waltz through that damn thing without batting an eye and murder everything in there without breaking a sweat. So once again, how's that useful? No, you have to go to greater and greater lengths to find epic level stuff for the players to be epically engaged in. Generally speaking, that means leaving behind the normal gaming world and entering some exotic stuff with some extreme weird stuff, which adds itself a whole nother level of crunch to keep track of. So when I hear some players go, I just don't like the crunch. This is the sort of thing that things I tend to dial in with. Yeah, I get that you can actually you can get too deep into it, and if you're not into it, it's not for you. And yet enough people were that they kept making these books because you had to have somebody was going to buy these things, running mixed level campaigns, divinations and keeping secrets, reutilizing important NPCs. This should have been 101 for game master. So you want to be you want to be a game master, do you? Learn to reuse your NPCs. Learn to create a folder or a catalog of your NPCs because you went to the effort to create them. There's no reason you can't use them over and over again for different scenarios. I mean, sometimes you just have to, what the hell, just crap popping up. I hate that shit. I'm trying to do stuff and get distracted by other stuff because the computer keeps wanting to drop stuff up. So we got 100 epic adventure ideas. You're going to need these. It can be a challenge at epic level to come up with yet another epic level thing. So it's nice to have stuff like this to give you an idea. All right. Epic rogues steal the scepter of all power from the Dragon King. Evil opportunists slay the guardian of flame of destiny, hoping to remove the law of reality to their own liking. Dwarf miners follow a vein of adamantite to a hinged valve sealed with divine magic to an age older than any of the current deities. Yeah, things like what? What are you even messing with this stuff? Experience points, rewards. Just keeps going up. It just tells you how to just keep maxing it out. You can keep driving up. So the thing that you have to be able to do though is to twink some of the bad guys. Can you imagine an epic level goblin? What goblin would ever live long enough to be an epic level anything? And if so, what's the story behind that goblin? And people make arguments. Well, that could happen, and I'm one of those people. I can see it happening, but it would be extremely rare. And the most logical way for an epic level goblin, for example, to exist in my mind is if that goblin was a player character. If that player character had worked its way up through the ranks to make that epic level thing, then you basically have what could be considered a new deity for the goblin kin because this particular goblin got to be godlike in their abilities. And tell me that wouldn't concoct a religion amongst the damn humanoids, because it would. Chapter 4. Epic magic items. Once again, you got to have stuff that fits the campaign. If you're going to have 25th level things running around, you better have weapons and armor and magic items that fit and work for them. And then I put myself in one of those scenarios where, okay, well, here's the final death. This +5 undead Ghost Touch Morningstar also grants its wielder immunity to energy drain attacks. Furthermore, if its wielder is capable of turning the undead, it gains the positive energy or a feat. Caster levels 22nd pre-requirement, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this thing is literally a one-off. This is a one very specific weapon, should never be existent in multiple forms. So if it's this potent, it's either if it's laying around in a epic level horde, how did it get there? But likely, more often than not, if you're going to encounter things like this, it's because it's being utilized by an epic foe. So if you defeat the epic foe, you get to take the weapon from them. You don't just get to find the thing laying in a in an unused corner somewhere. And it should be like that. These things should be very, by all definition of what an artifact would be to anybody under 10th level, anything at epic level by default is a blasted an artifact, in my opinion. For what little that is worth to some. Always nice. Now, the reverse of this is too. So I've seen a few things that cropped up in the epic level items and equipments and things like this, and I thought, well, how can I can utilize this, but how can I dumb it down? How can I make a 6th level version of this thing to give you the similar stuff? So, for example, the bracers of relentless might. These adamantine bracers give a plus 12 enhancement bonus to the wearer's strength and constitution. Wearer's treated as 2 size categories larger than normal. So, if this is how this affects it, say 21st level, if I wanted to create the 11th level version of Bracers of Relentless Might, I would cut this enhancement in half, so the Bracers would grant a +6 enhancement bonus to the wearer's strength and constitution as opposed to a 12, and then the wearer is treated to 1 size category larger than normal as opposed to 2 to maximize of colossal. For the purpose of combat-related opposement checks, may apply a modifier based on size, which is bull rush, grapple, and trip. It's not too awful hard to reverse engineer some of this stuff in order to make them in. Then we get into sections on special purpose items and intelligent items. Item ego, item intelligence. I have had some creative fun with intelligence items, and of course, your most common intelligent item is a sword, and finding things that are beyond the sword is another set. There was a set of armor that this player found, and it was an experiment on my part. So it was intelligent armor, and the armor was supposedly worn by some really ancient, famous warlord general from the age of heroes before, and so it gave the intelligence of the armor actually would whisper tactical advice to the wearer. It would also be the armor was semi aware, so you couldn't attack. You could get shot in the back, but you couldn't get melee attacked in the back because the armor would know. The armor would warn you and be already in the process of helping you position yourself to mitigate whatever was coming. So yeah, there were just creative ways of finding different things from the standards that are offered. And we get minor artifacts and major artifacts. And once again, a major epic level artifact is something that a lower level character should never get their hands on. On opposing side of that, I have tapped items for treasure MacGuffins from these higher level books because A, it seemed like neat to do at the time. B, because they truly are extremely rare in every sense of the term of an artifact. This is the legitimate McCoy. And 3, because I was a strong believer that a lot of the ability to operate the item is based on your abilities. So if you're not an epic level character and you possess an epic level MacGuffin or item, perhaps that epic you're not able to fully engage it. And that means opportunities. As you grow and advance, your character gets better and gets more leveled up, then more options and availability for this item reveals itself. The other side of it is that perhaps, once again, these are one-off items. They're very unique. And if so, perhaps there are others who want them. And this could be part of the catalyst for a number of secondary foes or outright foes. So, your fighter's running around with this highly magical set of armor that was meant for a godlike hero from another age, and it's thought to be lost. And now rumors have gotten out that you were wearing it and it's running around in the realms. Well, now people are coming to notice, and maybe occasionally some representative of some extremely wealthy Yahoo will approach with an offer to purchase that armor that you can't refuse. And when that fails, they make every effort to make you give it up, and or theft and 100 other damn things. So the possibilities, once again, are only limited to your imagination. So we get into chapter 5, monsters. Talking about level adjustments, creating characters using the ECO, and creating characters using ECO effectively. So, uh, monsters by challenge rating, monsters by type and subtype, abomination types. This was one of my traps when I was younger that I fell into as a GM. When I started looking at things like I said, planular combat, I tended to want to. I ran a number of campaigns and jaunts into various planes because you kind of do that. That's what's there. We tapped it. We made use of it. But over time, I discovered it's better to have a reason for doing it, not just to do it for fun. I mean, just spur of the moment stuff. And at the lower levels, the less you do, the better. Your jaunts onto other planes at lower levels should be extremely rare and very circumstantial. Now, you're going to go to the plains. You're going to find out that they're peopled and populated by stuff that will eat you literally alive and make mincemeat out of you without breaking wind. And that's because they're on the plains and they're prestige levels. They're above 10th level in most cases. You don't find a whole lot of second level yahoos running around on the plains successfully. Not saying it don't happen. I just don't recommend it. The monsters, though, of course, increasingly get weirder and more exotic and more crazy, because they kept getting more and more desperate to find stuff that could be a potential foe. And from this, some of these are retarded in my brain. I look at them and I think, but some of them are bloody genius. And another aspect, some of these make awesome horrors for lower level campaigns. When the lower level are running around trying to chase down something that's so beyond their ability, trying to actually avoid encountering the thing you're trying to get rid of is part of the draw. So how do you resolve it? It's not, lots of possibles, lots of good stuff. Debbie Lynch. Devastating Vermin, Dance Dragons, Epic Dragons, as if dragons weren't bad enough. Jesus, we gotta have epic level dragons too. We got Force Dragons, the Elemental Primal. I had an elemental campaign that we tapped some of this stuff. It was brutal. It was brutal. Fun too, but brutal. All right. Let's see. Go on. I can go through all this stuff. Saint Elder, Winterite, Worm that Walks. Okay. An epic setting, chapter 6. Multi-year in the multiverse of epic campaigning, several organizations exist to track the epic level characters and members. All right, so this is like some epic level clubs and factions you can join and become part of. So here's the Garrote, the epic level assassins group, the Cleaners. This one here is Hunt. The Gleaners hunt artifacts throughout the plains, deriving pleasures from the ultimate hobby. Okay, remember what I said earlier about using, as a GM master, you can tap a lot of this stuff for lower level campaigns. I used the Gleaners one time, and it was in a secondary role. It was a big city campaign we was running out of Waterdeep, and it's probably been 20 years ago. And one of the characters that got their hands on a high level MacGuffin, a magic item. And once again, I believe that it was way too powerful for them as a group to use. The idea was that they were supposed to find it and then turn it over to one of the temples or something. I don't remember what. But they changed their mind and decided, no, let's keep this thing and figure out how to use it. And so what I ended up doing was having an incident several sessions later because they were still having trouble. I forget exactly what the artifact was, but they were having trouble getting it to work right because they weren't sufficiently high enough in level, and I was not going, no matter how much they argued or debated, I was not going to unlock that low level pass. It's just there was reasons why you should not have access to this thing at your lower level, and I just figured that was a good reason to use it. So what I did was, is I came across these guys, and I thought, okay, this is a natural organization to pilfer it. Because I didn't want just some random thug or a random thief guild guy popping in and grabbing it, because then the player characters could just track it down, chase the guy down, get it back, or eradicate the thieves guild. Nobody wants that, except some people, and then they just get other people to replace them. But so I come up with this outfit, and I thought, well, all right, so this next tier level of capability keeps popping in, and I started out by this one lore master. I believe she was the character was a lore master character, and she was uh, very nice and polite about it, but she kept trying to explain to the characters that, well, you have this thing that really has no business being on the prime material plane because it belonged to this and it was supposed to be that, and so she was trying to negotiate with them to donate it to, I think, the local temple of Waukegan, but I don't quote me on that. And when that didn't pan out, then 2 or 3 sessions later, we had this extremely wealthy, exotic looking merchant who was actually one of these fellers from one of the planar travels that was easily double as epic, easily an epic level character by NPC. And that person went in as a merchant and was looking to purchase this item. This is, it's very understanding. You have it. Well, no, we don't. I'm sorry, but we know you have it. And here's what we would offer you. And in exchange, we'll give you these 3 things of lesser capabilities, more quite suitable for what you guys do, and a small chest of gemstones. Enough there to tide you over for the next season. And so on and so forth. And I don't remember how that panned out, because it was never part of the main campaign. It was just one of these secondary things, and more often than not, it was either an individual or force trying to interact with the individual who had possession of the artifact directly, or like in the case of the members of the Gleaners, where they were trying to approach and negotiate to acquire the item. And eventually we end up getting, I end up resorting in a third party coming in and stealing the item. And I think at this point, the players were just so fed up with the attempts to gain the artifact that they gave up on it. Either they gave up on it, or they tried to chase it down, and the thief moved beyond their ability, and that would have made them travel the plains to go trace it down, and they just decided at that point maybe it wasn't worth everything, and then they lamented not selling it the first time, and et cetera, et cetera. Just kind of goes. The God kissed. The Order of the Book. Order of the Shield. Member benefits and responsibilities. So this gives you what these also do. These factions for epic level play as examples. First off, that's just that they're giving you some working examples of what factions at epic level might look like and consist of, so then you can create your own that suits your campaign. The other thing is that it gives the players this idea that there's a deeper depth to the world and the universe than what even they realize, and this is what lets them to expand into the concepts of playing their campaigns and epic level campaigns and things like this. But so it's just one of those things that they're either going to get it or they're not going to get it, I guess. That's how you look at it. The Regulators, the Union Sentinels, the City of Union. City of Union is a common crossroads for planular travel. It was back in the day, too. I don't remember what supplement off the top of my head where it originally showed up from. I think it's in the back of the Deities and Demigods book. I don't quote me on that, because I'd have to go grab the book and review it for sure. been a minute since I did that, but I know that this was a common stopping place for a lot of my initial campaign runs that are planular level jaunts and adventures. In the rare occasions that I had players do some kind of gate travel or something, it was a good 50-50 chance that I would have them show up here because I didn't really want them. They were at that point. They really were not suited for extended forays in across the plains, in my opinion. Anyway, they didn't agree with it, and I don't think they ended well. I think their group ended up getting eradicated pretty quick after they got to Union, and from Union they went somewhere else. I don't remember which ones they went, but it didn't end well. It didn't end well, such as trade, taxes, and travel. Union geography, talking about Union specifically, but it made for a good starting off place and a good occasional place to make up and bounce for. Oh yeah, and there was one campaign. Jesus, that's been 15, 20 years. It's back in the 2010 era, 2012 era ish. The characters had progressed to a point where they were getting into prestige class scale. They were in the 12th to 15th level ish era, and they chose to find they wanted to find someplace more secure and more centrally located to their adventures, and then they end up getting to purposely coming to Union in order to set up a basically they set up themselves for their base of operations there, so they had their home and their home and their fort and their storage and all that other crap there, and then because of the sheer amount of planar access from Union to other locations, they started using it to raid and go off on adventures and things like that. And I think that ran for about 5 or 6 months. That campaign ended with the group just finally coming to a conclusion that they've done a lot and we want to go do something. Let's start something else. Usually it was let's start a Star Wars campaign or something like that. Military quarter, perfumed quarter, various quarters at Union, right? That Epic Level Adventures, some pre-venture ideas and stuff here for you to utilize, so on and so forth. All right. Okay. And then epic level NPCs of Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms and things like that. So, Lord Robler and Slipperplunk and the Cat Lord and a bunch of others, right? So once again, Epic Level, this is a great book. If you really want to expand your repertoire and options for higher level play, then this book or books like this are a necessity. And be prepared. These books are thicker than your normal player handbook because they're devoted to a lot more higher level gameplay. If your players and yourself are not ready to get into the nuts and bolts, the gearboxes of how things run and why they run, then maybe the Epic Level is not for you. Maybe this is not the sort of thing at your table. It gets really complicated fast, and combat can be both drawn out and extensive or brutally fast, and depending on the scenario. And that's not for everybody, And once again, I love the Kennys of the world. The people are not exactly, high overachievers, but this is beyond most of them. I'm not going to say that you can't run epic level play that they can't participate in. You can, but you just won't get you won't get everything out of it that you potentially could. And the sheer amount of potential in here for role play is just staggering. And if you look at it from that perspective, we've moved into this realm where our characters have become such movers and shakers. They're so important, whether they're infamous or famous or infamous, it doesn't matter. But the players have to be on board with this. And generally speaking, combat should become less and less of a thing the higher up you go, ability-wise. You should be able to you should be challenged in many other ways. And a lot of that involves dialogue and negotiatings and interactions that don't involve physical combat. And not a lot of players want to buy into that. Just my opinion on that. Anyway, till next